answer my question, if you would, please. Well, we're going to be limited on time. We've got a tough chairman here.
Economic growth has been solid, and though it may be slowing, and the unemployment rate is still historically low. Inflation came down today, as we saw with the recent CPI report.
Okay.
And I think that
Governor Bowman, could you answer my question,
please?
please? I asked in what ways President Trump's tariffs and their economic effects threaten the stability of our financial system. Chair Powell has already identified it. Higher inflation and higher unemployment. I'd like to hear from you what ways you think Trump's tariffs potentially threaten our financial system.
Senator, as you know, the mandated goals, or the goals that have been mandated by Congress for the Federal Reserve, are maximum employment and price stability. And as the path for these policies continues to
Could you use the word tariff?
The warning signs were flashing, and Senator Elizabeth Warren made sure no one in the room could ignore them. During a 10th Senate hearing, Warren delivered a sharp rebuke of the Trump administration's economic policies, zeroing in on tariffs, financial instability, and what she described as a dangerous failure of regulatory vigilance at a moment when the economy is showing signs of serious stress. Before we dive into what this means for everyday Americans, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We break down economic hearings like this so you can understand what is really at stake, not just the sound bites.
Thank you, Senator.
Ranking Member Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So anyone who's been awake for the last week has seen the self-inflicted economic maelstrom that both the United States and the world have lived through. The Trump administration is living in a fantasy land and evidently not living there alone. According to Team Trump, the economy is booming, tariff money is rolling in, massive tax cuts for billionaires will be free, and the research scientists DOGE has fired from the National Institute of Health and the customer service specialists that they fired from the Social Security Administration are happily screwing in tiny little iPhone screws as they work in iPhone factories that have magically sprung up across the country. Look, the Trump administration is in desperate need of financial regulators who live in the real world. Governor Bowman, if confirmed, you would be the #1 financial cop on the beat during an incredibly dangerous time. As we've learned from previous crises, the tremors in the financial system can lead to avalanches in the rest of the economy and vice versa. You would be the person on the front line of defense to prevent that from happening. So Chair Powell said that President Trump's tariffs will lead to, and I quote, both higher unemployment and higher inflation. We've seen wild swings in the financial markets over the past week, at least some of us have seen them. Governor Bowman, I want to understand how you see the risks of the current moment. In what ways could President Trump's tariffs and their economic effects threaten the stability of our financial system?
Well, Senator, that's a great question, and I'd like to start by stating that the economy is strong.
Okay, fine, but answer my question, if you would, please. Well, we're going to be limited on time. We've got a tough chairman here.
Economic growth has been solid, and though it may be slowing, and the unemployment rate is still historically low. Inflation came down today, as we saw with the recent CPI report.
Okay.
And I think that
Governor Bowman, could you answer my question, please? I asked in what ways President Trump's tariffs and their economic effects threaten the stability of our financial system. Chair Powell has already identified it. Higher inflation and higher unemployment. I'd like to hear from you what ways you think Trump's tariffs potentially threaten our financial system.
Senator, as you know, the mandated goals, or the goals that have been mandated by Congress for the Federal Reserve, are maximum employment and price stability. And as the path for these policies continues to
Could you use the word tariff? My question, I've asked it now twice, is in what ways do President Trump's tariffs threaten the financial system? Jay Powell has already answered this question. You're over at the Fed. Could you just give me a straight answer on that?
I think as we were watching and waiting to see how the path for these policies continues to evolve, we'll understand what the economic effects of
So are
those
you saying
policies
you
will
don't
be.
know if the tariffs could have any effect on the financial system?
Well, I think it's unclear at this point, since we don't know how the economic policies will be.
So let me get this straight.
And what their effects on the industries will be.
President Trump's tariffs threatened to strangle the economy. This is according to the Fed chair. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. President Trump's tariffs threaten to strangle the economy. This is according to the Fed chair. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. The stock market is experiencing the kinds of swings we haven't seen in 30 years. The stock market is exper We don't see outside financial crises. Even Treasury securities, they're supposed to be resilient when people fly to safety, have started to experience volatility. And you don't see any risks to the financial system? Nothing? You got nothing for me here?
Senator, what I would tell you is that we're starting on a strong economic foundation.
Okay, what I'm hearing is nothing.
As we see,
so
that
look,
there has been
the
volatility
worst
in the stock
scenario
market that's
we
existed
have
for
here is
a
that
number of
this
years.
Trump-inflicted economic crisis undermines confidence in our financial system. Banks and other lenders may face huge losses as households and businesses struggle to meet their debt payments if we plunge into a recession. Hedge funds and other leveraged financial firms are already facing margin calls and may be forced to dump assets, including treasuries, at fire sale prices. Financial instability would amplify the harms of these irrational tariffs. And you want to just sit here and say, oh, it's all good. So let me ask you, Governor Bowman, will you immediately conduct a stress test of the big banks to probe whether they can endure a deep and prolonged recession triggered by a massive trade shock? Just run the tests. Are you willing to do that?
We have a process for stress testing that has already been underway this year, and it will continue to move forward as we planned.
So are you saying you will not run a stress test immediately? Is that exactly right? You're just, all of the things that have happened in the last week and in the last 2 months, you're just going to cover your eyes and cover your ears and say, I'm sure the banks will be fine. We'll check them out in several months.
Senator Warren, we are always watching the...
Always watching, but not running a stress test. I apologize for going over, Mr. Chairman. Lord.
Chairman,
Warren opened with a blunt assessment. She said the Trump administration is in desperate need of financial regulators who live in the real world. Addressing Federal Reserve Governor Michelle Bowman, who was appearing in a confirmation context, Warren laid out the gravity of the role. If confirmed, Bowman would be one of the top financial regulators in the country during what Warren described as an incredibly dangerous time for the economy. Warren reminded the room that financial crises rarely stay contained. What starts as stress inside banks or markets can quickly spill over into job losses, housing instability, and broader economic collapse. She framed Bowman as someone who would be on the front line defense, responsible for spotting early warning signs before tremors turn into avalanches. If you want more clear explanations of how financial regulation affects your job, your savings, and your future, subscribe now. Her question was direct and repeated several times. In what ways do President Trump's tariffs threaten the stability of the financial system? What followed was a revealing exchange. Bowman repeatedly tried to pivot to general statements about the economy being strong, unemployment being low, and inflation data showing improvement. Warren cut her off, not to be rude, but to demand an answer to the specific question on the table. Tariffs, financial system risk, spell it out. Bowman hesitated. She said it was unclear how the policies would evolve and what their ultimate effects would be. Warren pushed harder. Was Bowman really saying she could not identify any risks from tariffs that the Fed chair himself had already flagged? This is where Warren shifted from questioning to warning. Subscribe here because this part matters for anyone who remembers past financial crashes. This, Warren argued, is how financial instability amplifies economic damage. It is not theoretical. It is exactly how previous crises unfolded. She accused the Trump administration of creating a self-inflicted economic crisis that undermines confidence at every level, from consumers to global investors. And she made it clear she was alarmed by what she saw as regulatory complacency in the face of obvious danger signals. Bowman responded that the Federal Reserve already has a stress testing process underway and planned to continue on its existing timeline. Warren pressed again. Was Bowman refusing to run an immediate stress test given the volatility of the past weeks and months? Bowman did not budge. She said regulators were watching the situation. That answer set Warren off. Subscribe now if you want honest breakdowns of moments like this, because this exchange was not about tone, it was about priorities. Warren accused Bowman of effectively covering her eyes and ears while markets swung wildly. She warned that waiting months to check bank resilience could be catastrophic if the economy tips into recession before regulators act. Watching, Warren said, is not the same as preparing. Her frustration was unmistakable. To Warren, the refusal to act quickly signaled a mindset that assumes things will be fine until they are suddenly very much not fine. History, she reminded the room, shows that financial regulators do not get second chances once a crisis hits. As the chair attempted to move the hearing along, Warren apologized for going over time, but her message had already landed. This was not just a critique of one official, it was a broader indictment of an administration she believes is ignoring clear economic warning signs while pushing policies that increase risk for working families. The takeaway from this hearing is simple but sobering. Economic stability depends not just on markets, but on regulators who are willing to name risks clearly and act before damage becomes irreversible. Warren's exchange raised serious questions about whether current leadership is prepared to do that. If you want continued coverage of how economic policy decisions affect your future, make sure you are subscribed. These hearings shape the rules that govern the entire financial system, and we will keep breaking them down for you.